Hello everybody. This is I believe it's the 7th video in my series. I'm probably going to forget one of these days what video I'm working on. But for now, yes, it's the 7th video. And we're again talking about my journey outside of the Watchtower Society. And in the last video, we talked about the trauma that I experienced as a XJW, when I discovered the truth about the truth. And I said we were going to continue that discussion in this video. Well, I lied, actually, because I want to take a step back. Oh, and by the way, the video was made on the same day, same shirt. Okay, so I want to take a step back. I want to talk about, and this is a very personal to me. I mean, in my escape from the Watchtower, and when I became a follower of Christ, because I feel that Christ, he set me free in increments, and that's how I was able to get free from the Watchtower Society. Because think of a prison system. Okay, you have this prison system, and you have your cell, right? If you're going to escape the prison, you have to escape the cell, and then you have to escape all the other compartments in that building, right? And then after that, you have to escape the actual building into the courtyard. And then once you're in the courtyard, you need to escape that. And then once you're out, you got to get as far away as possible from that prison to truly be free. All right. Well, that's the way it happened to me in the Watchtower Society. I'm not going to talk about it here because it's not the issue that we're discussing right now, but I was removed as an elder. A lot of people didn't realize that I was actually removed. They thought I stepped down. But no, I was actually removed. And we're going to talk about that later. Not because of bitterness, not because we're going to go into all the specifics. But remember I talked about how when you leave the organization, you thought you left because you found some lie in the Watchtower Society. But in all actuality, the shelves were just getting heavier and heavier. And then it breaks, right? Okay. Well, my story about what happened in connection with being an elder was one of those things that I subconsciously put on that shelf. So, but we'll talk about that later. Right now, we want to talk about the fact that I was now no longer an elder. And if you were once an elder as a Jehovah's Witness, you'll understand what I'm saying. Being an elder is another matrix within a matrix. I mean, all you have to do is hang out with other elders, and what are they talking about? Elder duties, things that they are doing and what they have to do, their parts and their, assembly talks they have to prepare, whatever. It's a matrix within a matrix. I mean, elders even have their own, secret book, although it's not secret now. You can just go online and read it, and it's boring. So anyway, but that is another world. So if you're an elder, it's almost like it's so much easier if you lose those so-called privileges if you're going to escape the Watchtower. Because once I was no longer an elder, what people didn't understand, but it's how I felt inside, is the fact that I was so happy to no longer be an elder. I was so relieved because I had been an elder for many, many years. In addition to that, I mean, I was a ministerial servant. I want to say at the age of 20. From the age of 20 into my mid-40s, I was, giving public talks on Sundays, driving to different congregations, giving these talks, and then all the time it takes to prepare those talks. And not just those talks, there are other talks as well. You have many duties, Watchtower duties, as a elder in the congregation. So it's very hard to balance all of those things with your work. You also have to take care of your yard. You got to take care of your house. You got to take care of your car. You got to spend time with your family. I mean, it consumes your life. Of course, if you truly love God and you believe Watchtower is God's organization, then you do it and you make sacrifices. And a lot of times you'll just keep on doing it, thinking that you're happy. All right, but when you can experience relief from those things, this is what it's like. It is like leaving the Watchtower itself, because you have broken free from that first cell. you feel free. I mean, now there's no obligations. You don't have to prepare talks anymore after you get back from a meeting. You don't have to leave on Sundays to give talks. You don't have to prepare anything to take the lead in anything. I mean, it was such a wonderful feeling because, I mean, being an elder is hard on so many levels. I mean, I know it sounds funny now, and we're going to talk more about this later, but I mean, if you were a spiritual man, I mean, as spiritual as you can get in the Watchtower Society, I mean, if you loved God, I mean, your whole life was like, I mean, you felt like a Jedi. It was like the last of the Jedi. I mean, you're always constantly fighting the forces of evil. You know, you were trying to protect the congregation from the elders. You were trying to encourage the congregation because very few actually, you know, gave true encouragement on a spiritual level to these people. So anyway, you know, that sounds funny, but we're going to talk about that too. What I just talked about there, what I just mentioned. So I now was free and happy, much happier than what I was. Well, after a few years, though, you know, if you were serving with a good heart, and you really believed all of this, you get to a point where you want to do more. Okay, so at the time, after a while, I decided I was going to go to sign language in Olympia, Washington, to a sign language congregation. It wasn't really my idea initially, but I went hesitantly. Well, after a while, I actually started to enjoy the language. I mean, I was able to, you know, comment at these meetings. I was even giving small talks in sign language. I learned a lot of sign language, and much of it I still remember, and I really don't want to forget it all because it's a pretty cool language, especially if you gesture all the time like me and knock things down. I really enjoyed it. Okay, so now, you know, we talked about that first cell that Vincent was now freed of. That was being an elder. So now I am in a new compartment in this prison building, and that is called sign language. Sign language. Now, I normally would never have gone there. Like I said, I hesitated, but for some reason, I decided to go there. And that was the absolute best decision I made in my life. And I'll tell you why. And I know I'm saying this in a joking way, but there's truth to it. If you're a Jehovah's Witness and you want to be free of the Watchtower, and if you're thinking like, should I leave the Watchtower? Go to sign language congregation. It is the best place. And I'll tell you why. Because when I got there, I was no longer an elder. Now imagine that you're no longer an elder, so you feel absolutely free because you've escaped one matrix. And now you don't have to listen to any meeting. I mean, you're learning the language. I mean, it's kind of intense because at home you're watching videos of sign language and you're trying to understand the Bible, you're trying to understand Watchtower articles, but when you're actually at the meeting, you're trying to pay attention when you're learning, but you're learning and you're not thinking sign language necessarily because you're not deaf. I mean, you're still thinking English. So you're sitting there in this kingdom hall and there's just absolute silence. And in that silence, that is when I began to really meditate on my life and the direction it was going, because I was no longer an elder. So the way I worded it in my story is that at that point, I was now able to see my life through the eyes of an average publisher or an average witness sitting there in the Kingdom Hall. No longer thinking about talks, no longer thinking about, oh, I need to set a good example. I was just one of them out there. It had been so many years since I was just one of them, you know. So I had time to reflect on things. So instead of focusing on, oh, I got to make this talk sound good, I now was just looking at people. I was looking at the elders. I was looking at their behavior. I was looking at just the entire scenario. In fact, in the story, and I'm going to mention this now, here are some of the things I thought about when I was sitting there. One, some time had passed by since I had left the English and gone into sign language, and not once did anyone come to me and approach me and talk about the possibility of being an elder again. Now, did I want to be an elder? Absolutely not. Did I want to be an elder in sign language? No, you'd have to shoot me before I would decide to be an elder there. No. But the idea that no one asked me to be an elder, what that did was it made me think back to when I was an elder in my English congregation, because when a publisher, a witness, moves to another congregation, a letter of recommendation, or there's a letter that is sent out to, it tells you the family and what kind of family they are, and it's basically a report card about you and your family. It gets sent to another congregation, and so all of the things that your former elder body knew about you and the way they felt about you get sent to that other congregation so that they can prejudge you. And yes, because I have read these letters that are sent to the congregation as an elder, and I know one time there was an elder that read me one of those letters, and he asked me if it sounded good. And no, I told him that no, it paints a bad picture about this individual over in this other congregation. I said, no, it sounds terrible. And that is the typical letter. The letter that I heard, that's typical. And so they judge you. So I started talking about these. I started thinking about these letters that are sent out in secret. You never know what they say. Yet it allowed that body of elders, it allowed them to prejudge you and your family. And I'm like, you have time to think about all this stuff. I mean, I wasn't looking for trouble. I was just sitting there thinking, wow, that is just so unscriptural. That is so not Christ-like at all. It almost seems illegal. So that really began to bother me. Then I started observing the elders in that congregation, the elders and publishers, but primarily elders because, they're the ones supposed to take the lead, right? Okay, you have all of these elders in sign language. They're pioneers. I'm like, how can you pioneer? You got a full-time job. Well, let me tell you how they pioneer. They told me. They'll send an email out in the morning to someone and ask them basically do you know anyone that knows sign language? Okay. Then their job involves driving far away, all right? So they'll drive far away. I mean, it could take them 5 hours to get there. And they'll ask that person, hey, do you know anyone that knows sign language? And they'll do all this driving. And they'll count, 10, 12, 13-hour days. That's how they pioneer. Because in sign language, it wasn't encouraged to go knocking on doors because you had to find deaf people. You had to find out where they were, and then of course you had to preach to them. But the thing is, deaf people were so hard to find, and so people like myself, no, never preached to them. We were just driving around looking for deaf, burning gas, burning time, burning our lives, doing these things. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. I really began to wake up to how nonsensical this whole thing is. I mean, who are they fooling, with this counting of time and then you got these letters of recommendation and letters, that are sent out about these families. I was thinking about that. And then in the congregation itself, I mean, I was, I didn't talk to anybody because, it's sign language, so it was pretty quiet. But, there were times you thought some people were really good people. They'd come up and give you a hug and all this stuff. And you had what you thought was a good relationship with them. And then some weird thing would happen. And someone would accuse you of being a racist because you jokingly, may have grabbed their shirt and said something to them because you were playing around. It became insane. Let's put it that way. Fortunately for me, everything turned out good. I wasn't the one that looked crazy in the end, but I started thinking about what is wrong with these people, There was no real love in the congregation. Everything was competition, especially with the language. The English hearing people in a sign language congregation have to be the worst. They are arrogant as you can think of. So all of this combined just really affected me. Okay, so and then at that time, that's when I discovered something in the Watchtower volumes, or at least I didn't discover it for the first time, but I rediscovered something that I had seen years ago, and that was the straw that took me out of the organization. It had to do with Charles Taze Russell's biography and how the society lied about it and all of this. So that's what really did it to me. However, you see how it worked. I was released from the cell of being an elder. I was brought out to this other place that helped me to escape the Watchtower Society, because now I was waking up. And my son at this time, I know we're at the almost at the 16-minute mark. I'll wrap this up here, but my son at the time, he knew what was happening because I believe I expressed some things to him. And anyway, without my knowledge, he went to his mother and said, "Hey, we got to get Dad out of sign language. We got to get him back to English because he's ready to leave the organization." So that's what happened. We left sign language, and I was scared. I didn't want all of these thoughts. I didn't want what I seen to be true. So I went back. I agreed, let's go back to English. And then from there on, that becomes another story that I'm going to talk about in my next video. So yes, the progression that I experienced out of the Watchtower Society, I believe that was all Christ directed. And it's not because of this one incident here. With hindsight, there are so many things that happened in the Watchtower Society. There were so many feelings I had. There were experiences I had. There was experiences that I had immediately after leaving the Watchtower Society. You can really see God's direction in my life. And if you're a follower of Christ, you're going to realize that my experiences are not unique. This happens to people when Christ is calling them. So anyway, we're going to end up in the video there. And the next time, I promise you, we will continue this. What happened to me after I returned to the English congregation. We'll talk about that a little bit more. All right, till the 8th video, we will see you later. And I'm pretty sure I'll have a fresh shirt on. All right, we'll see you.